Hello there, and welcome. Tonight, we'll listen to the planet breathe. What we call weather storms, clouds, wind, is Earth's pulse, a constant rhythm of heat and air that never truly stops. From the shimmer of morning dew to the roar of a hurricane, it's all one great system of motion. Above you right now, invisible rivers of air are flowing faster than any highway. In the time it takes you to blink, a lightning bolt releases more energy than a nuclear reactor. The atmosphere remembers every sunrise, every storm, every sigh of wind. And while you're settling in, before your eyes grow too heavy, I'd love it if you gently tapped subscribe or press the little hype button YouTube recently added. It's a small click, but it helps keep these experiments and explorations orbiting out into the algorithm. You can also leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the night. It's oddly fascinating to see where people are drifting off with us, scattered across the world like stars across the galaxy. Now take a deep breath, let your day drift away, and let's travel together into the quiet corners of the universe. Long before trees breathed and oceans shimmered blue, before anything had a name or eyes to look upward, the air itself was being born. Earth was young, then molten, restless, wrapped in a haze of fire. Volcanoes tore through the crust in endless eruptions, spilling oceans of magma and clouds of gas that rolled outward like smoke from a cosmic forge. Out of that chaos came our first breath. Hydrogen and helium drifted into space, too light to stay. What remained was heavier carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen, water vapor, each exhaled from the planet's deep lungs. The sky was not blue then. It was a copper veil, thick and toxic, glowing faintly with the heat of the newborn world. As time passed, rain began to fall, not gentle or clean, but endless and fierce, boiling at first, then cooling as the planet exhaled its heat. It fell for centuries, carving the first oceans, pulling gases from the air into the sea. Slowly, sunlight began to touch the surface without being swallowed by smoke. In those waters, tiny forms of life appeared, fragile and luminous. They did not know they were changing everything. They absorbed carbon dioxide and released oxygen, molecule by molecule, drop by drop. Over millions of years, the balance shifted. What began as poison became breath. The atmosphere turned transparent, the copper veil lifted, and the sky transformed into the deep, familiar blue we still wake beneath. That air you breathe now is ancient. Each inhale carries remnants of volcanic gas, the sigh of oceans, the whisper of leaves from forests long gone. The nitrogen in your lungs was shaped in the planet's early chaos, while the oxygen comes from the quiet labor of photosynthesis, the partnership between sunlight and green things. The air is not static. It moves, flows, turns. It is a vast ocean made of invisible waves. When you feel the wind on your skin, you're feeling the motion of heat and pressure that began long before humanity. Warm air rises. Cool air sinks. The planet spins, tilting its axis, stirring the atmosphere into spirals that never stop. From the surface to the edge of space, the air layers itself like a great, breathing organism. The troposphere, closest to the ground, is where all weather lives: clouds, rain, wind, the shifting moods of the sky. Above it, the stratosphere stretches calm and cold, holding the ozone that shields life from the sun's harsh radiation. Higher still lies the mesosphere, where meteors burn into brief streaks of light. And beyond that, the thermosphere, thin and electrified, glowing faintly with auroras. At last comes the exosphere, a ghost of air fading into silence, atoms escaping into space. Each layer hums with motion, currents folding and curling, exchanging energy in an endless rhythm. The air seems light, but it carries weight, trillions of tons, pressing gently against your skin. Every breath you take is part of a balance so delicate It could be broken by a single degree of temperature, a subtle shift in chemistry, a pause in the wind. Yet it endures, held in place by gravity, pulled toward the planet, even as it longs to drift away. Without that invisible hold, the atmosphere would slip off into darkness, and Earth would fall silent. The sky is not empty. It's full of movement so slow we mistake it for stillness. Tiny eddies of air spiral around your hand when you wave it. Updrafts rise over mountains and fall into valleys, creating invisible rivers that flow without end. Over deserts, heat lifts in trembling columns. Over oceans, cold air rolls in sheets, carrying the scent of salt and rain. The entire system breathes in cycles day into night, summer into winter, calm into storm. It is the planet's pulse, the rhythm of pressure and heat that sustains everything living. Every molecule of air has traveled. The oxygen you inhale tonight might once have been frozen in Antarctic ice or exhaled by a fern during the age of dinosaurs. Air is the planet's great recycler, its messenger, its memory. It carries pollen, ash, sea spray, and the faint dust of meteorites. It carries whispers, radio waves, and the songs of migrating birds. Even silence travels through it. When thunder rolls or a whisper reaches another ear, the air is what carries meaning across space. We think of wind as movement, but stillness is an illusion too. Even when the air feels calm, it's sliding past you, pushed by subtle gradients in pressure, nudged by the turning earth. The Coriolis effect bends these flows into curves, shaping jet streams that circle the planet, high and fast. They are the arteries of the atmosphere, guiding storms, steering weather, linking continents in invisible threads. A puff of dust from the Sahara can reach the Amazon. Smoke from a wildfire in one hemisphere can color sunsets in another. The breath of the planet is global, one continuous motion that never stops. Long ago, poets believed the wind carried spirits, voices of gods, omens of change. In a way, they were right. The air holds everything, the chemistry of life, the warmth of sunlight, the echo of creation. When lightning strikes, it splits oxygen molecules, creating ozone. When volcanoes erupt, they send sulfur into the stratosphere, shading the earth and cooling it for years. Every eruption, every forest, every ocean current adds its note to the symphony of weather. And through all of it, the atmosphere hums quietly, a membrane between Earth and space, thin but unbroken. Astronauts say that from orbit it looks like a faint blue halo hugging the planet, a fragile line between life and the void. It's hard to imagine that this whisper of gas could protect oceans, forests, and all that breathes. Yet it does. It is the skin of the world, stretching, trembling, alive. When you step outside and feel the breeze on your face, you're touching a living relic of deep time. You're feeling the same air that once moved across primeval seas, that fed ancient fires, that carried the scent of the first rain. Every gust, every sigh, every gentle wind against your cheek is the continuation of that first exhalation, the planet breathing still. And as night deepens and the air cools, listen. The world is inhaling. The trees release oxygen into the dark. The oceans exchange heat with the sky. Even the mountains shape the currents that flow around them, guiding the breath of the planet as it moves across valleys and plains. Above you, the atmosphere ripples like a slow tide, unseen but unending. The sky is never still because the earth itself is alive. It turns, tilts, breathes. It exhales heat, draws in light, and keeps its balance through perpetual motion. The air you breathe is both ancient and new, both fragile and infinite. It is the memory of fire and the promise of rain, the whisper that ties all living things together. Somewhere, high above the clouds, the thin edge of the atmosphere glows faintly blue, a boundary between our small world and the great dark beyond. And inside that glow, suspended in air that once was stone, once was water, once was light, life continues, breathing in, breathing out forever. High above the world, in a place where airplanes tremble and clouds are thin as breath, rivers are flowing that no eye can see. They never touch the ground, but they sculpt weather, bend storms, and decide where rain will fall. They are called jet streams and atmospheric rivers, and though they move in silence, their reach is enormous. The air you breathe may have once belonged to one of these unseen currents, speeding faster than a hurricane, circling the planet again and again. The sky, for all its openness, is full of paths. If you could see them, they'd look like ribbons of motion, narrow bands of wind slicing through the atmosphere, twisting and curling around the globe. Each one 1,000 kilometers long, only a few wide, but roaring with power. The jet streams form where warm tropical air collides with cold polar air, creating a tight seam between two temperatures. At that boundary, energy concentrates, wind accelerates. The planet's rotation bends it into an endless spiral, wrapping the world like thread around a spindle. These winds move faster than any storm below them, steering the weather, pulling fronts across oceans, carrying dust, pollen, and the faint smell of rain between continents. Every shift in those upper currents ripples downward. A small kink in the jet stream can decide whether a city sees gentle rain or a flood, a cool breeze or a drought. The looping waves that trace across weather maps are not random. They are the heartbeat of the atmosphere, expanding and contracting with the seasons, stretching toward the equator in winter, snapping back toward the poles in summer. When they stall, the weather below lingers, heat domes form, storms stay rooted in place. The sky begins to feel heavy, unmoving, as though the whole planet is holding its breath. But not all rivers of air live so high. Closer to the surface, near the boundaries between sea and sky, there are currents even more astonishing. Imagine a highway of moisture, 1,000 miles wide, streaming invisible water vapor from ocean to land. These are the atmospheric rivers, veins of humidity that carry more water than the Amazon itself. They gather over warm seas, fed by evaporation and wind, and stretch outward, long and winding, toward the continents. When they strike mountains or cooler air, the vapor condenses, and the sky releases its burden in torrential rain. Entire seasons can depend on them. In the Pacific, one of these rivers is known as the Pineapple Express, born near Hawaii and flowing east toward the coast of North America. When it makes landfall, the rain can seem endless, as if the ocean itself has risen to fall from the sky. Crops are fed, reservoirs filled, snowpacks deepened, and sometimes homes are lost. The same phenomenon that brings renewal also carries destruction. Every droplet that falls began as part of a journey through these unseen currents, lifted from waves by sunlight, carried for days across empty air, and finally drawn down by gravity into rivers and soil. Moisture moves like memory. The water in a single storm may have touched multiple oceans, evaporating, condensing, and falling again through cycles that stretch across centuries. The winds that guide it are old patterns, older than language, shaped by mountains, continents, and heat. Yet they are always changing. A shift in temperature can nudge the jet stream farther north, redirecting the rain. An El Niño in the Pacific can rearrange the sky, sending dry air where once there was abundance. The world breathes through these exchanges, air rising from ocean surfaces, cool air descending from polar heights, endlessly mixing, endlessly moving. If you stand on a windy coast and watch clouds stream inland, you're watching the surface expression of those great invisible rivers. You can feel them in the gusts that sting your eyes, in the salt carried miles from the sea. Somewhere above you, layers of air are sliding past each other like gears in motion, spinning the weather into being. The sound you hear in the wind is friction, the small turbulence of vast systems touching. Every raindrop that lands on your skin is part of a pattern much larger than itself. Before it fell, it was a vapor molecule drawn upward by warmth. Before that, it was liquid in a wave rolling under the sun, and before that, it might have been ice locked in a glacier, melting, evaporating, and entering the air once again. The rivers in the sky are not truly separate from the rivers on land. They are different expressions of the same endless circulation. The planet's water is always traveling upward, outward, downward, back. The sky is simply one of its routes. Scientists can map these flows now with satellites and sensors, tracing the trails of water vapor as they stretch across hemispheres. But even with all our knowledge, there's something ancient and unfathomable about them. They remind us that weather is not chaos, it's choreography. Heat rises, cold falls, air spins, moisture condenses. And yet within those rules lies an infinite variety, a living rhythm that can never be perfectly predicted. Each gust, each drop is unique. Sometimes, on a quiet night, you can feel it, the faint shifting of air above the rooftops, the way clouds drift faster than your eyes expect, the cool sigh that moves across your skin just before rain begins. That's the whisper of the invisible rivers. They're moving even when you sleep, crossing oceans, turning deserts green, feeding forests and snowfields. When morning comes and the sunlight breaks through scattered clouds, you're looking at the result of countless journeys. The rain that patters against your window may have begun its path halfway around the world. The sky is not empty. It is a living ocean of motion, layered with currents that flow without pause. Each gust you feel is connected to something vast and unseen, a breath drawn somewhere beyond the horizon. The jet streams hum above you, shaping storms you will never see. The atmospheric rivers drift in silence, carrying the weight of water and the promise of life. Together, they form the pulse of the planet, the unseen circulation that keeps the world alive, whispering over mountains, across plains, and through the stillness of night. Every day, the sky writes stories we rarely read. They drift above us in shifting shapes, cities of vapor, towers of light, drifting ghosts that change with every breath of wind. Clouds, though they seem soft and weightless, are among the most powerful architects of the planet. They move oceans of air, redirect sunlight, hold and release water, and sculpt the moods of the sky. They are the language of weather itself, written not in words, but in forms, each with a name as old as wonder: cirrus, stratus, cumulus, nimbus. Words that sound like spells, and in a way, they are. The first clouds were ancient things, born when the world still steamed. Back then, the atmosphere was a restless sea, and heat rose from the planet's surface like breath from a wound. As the air cooled, vapor condensed, and mists began to gather. From those veils came rain, and from rain came rivers. Over eons, this endless cycle refined itself into patterns, the air learning how to move, how to rise and fall, how to gather and release. Clouds became the sky's handwriting, the visible trace of invisible forces. At their heart, clouds are simply gatherings of water, tiny droplets or crystals suspended in air. But simplicity can be deceiving. A single cumulus cloud, the kind that floats on a summer afternoon, can weigh more than 100 elephants. Yet it stays aloft, balanced between gravity and the upward lift of warm air rising beneath it. Every second, trillions of droplets are forming and evaporating within that one cloud, vanishing and reappearing in constant rhythm. To watch it is to glimpse time itself, made visible in vapor. Cirrus clouds are the dreamers of the upper sky. They form miles above the earth, where the air is thin and cold enough to turn vapor into ice. They streak across the heavens in delicate fibers, like brushstrokes of light. When the sun sets, they catch the last colors of the day, gold, rose, then violet, lingering long after the land has gone dark. Their beauty is not stillness, but motion too slow to notice, threads unraveling and reforming in silence. They are the sky's memory, the first sign that the weather is changing, the gentle whisper that something new is on its way. Below them, float the cumulus, the storytellers. They rise in bright heaps, sculpted by heat and turbulence, their edges glowing white against the blue. They are clouds of childhood imagination, the ones that look like castles, ships, or sleeping animals. They form where the Earth's warmth rises to meet cooler air, swelling as water vapor condenses into droplets. Each one is a small engine of weather, releasing heat as it builds, drawing more air upward in a self-sustaining climb. Some fade quietly into nothing. Others grow restless, reaching higher, layer upon layer, until they transform into giants. Those giants are cumulonimbus clouds, the architects of storms. They tower miles into the atmosphere, their tops flattening against the stratosphere like anvils of white fire. Inside them, forces collide. Updrafts and downdrafts churn together, separating positive and negative charges until the cloud becomes a living battery. Within that electric heart, lightning is born. It begins as a whisper of imbalance, a spark seeking a path, then flashes outward in blinding brilliance. Hotter than the surface of the sun, the thunder that follows is the sky exhaling sound waves rippling through air, echoing across valleys and seas. Inside a storm cloud, the world becomes unrecognizable. Droplets freeze, fall, melt, and rise again in a looping ballet. Hailstones grow in concentric layers like tree rings, tossed upward by winds that exceed 100 miles an hour. The air itself vibrates with charge. For a moment, everything, the earth, the cloud, the air between, is connected by invisible threads of electricity. When the lightning finally arcs to the ground, it completes a circuit that began miles above. The sky touches the earth, and for an instant, they are one. Yet not all clouds are dramatic. Some are patient, contemplative, almost shy. Stratus clouds spread across the sky in endless gray sheets, muting the sun, softening shadows. They bring the kind of days that seem suspended in time when the world feels quieter and close. Others, altocumulus, lenticular, mammatus, bear stranger forms, like waves, lenses, or clusters of hanging pouches. Each shape tells a story about the air that made it, how quickly it cooled, how much moisture it held, how the wind sculpted its edges. The sky is never random. Every curl and layer is a sentence in a language written by heat and motion. If you could stand inside a cloud, you would not see the shapes you do from below. You'd see fog, tiny droplets, drifting, colliding, catching light in a million subtle ways. It would be quiet there, muffled, almost timeless. You'd feel the faint coolness of suspended water brushing against your skin, the delicate balance that keeps vapor aloft. Every breath would mix with the air around you, becoming part of the cloud's body, part of the endless cycle of rising and falling. In that stillness, you might understand why clouds have always been seen as bridges between to be, earth and sky, between matter and spirit, between what is known and what can only be felt. Long ago, sailors read clouds the way scholars read books. They knew that a ring of cirrus foretold rain, that a growing cumulus meant wind, that the flat gray ceiling of stratus warned of days without sun. Farmers watched them to predict harvest weather. Travelers studied them for signs of storms. Even now, with satellites and models, we still look up and guess. There's something ancient in the act of reading the sky, a quiet conversation between us and the air that holds us. Sometimes, near sunset, when the light slides low and the clouds turn molten, you can sense the scale of it all. Every glowing edge is made of billions of droplets catching the same beam of sunlight. Every shadowed fold is a dance of air and vapor, rising and falling in harmony. The whole atmosphere seems alive, breathing in colors, exhaling them into night. And when darkness comes, the clouds don't vanish. They continue drifting unseen, forming, dissolving, reshaping. Above the horizon, they are never still. The cirrus trace invisible rivers of wind. The cumulonimbus grow and decay like living mountains. Even the smallest wisp carries the story of temperature, moisture, and motion, an entire world unfolding in miniature. To watch them is to witness creation in slow motion, energy transforming, the sky dreaming aloud. Tomorrow, new clouds will take their place, born of the same ocean that once gave rise to the first mists of Earth. They will form over deserts, forests, and seas, carrying rain to one place and shadow to another. You might see them and not notice, or you might look longer and see what they really are. The atmosphere thinking out loud, the earth breathing in vapor, the sky remembering its own history. Every cloud, no matter how small, is a fragment of that story, a page torn from the oldest book in the world, drifting just above your head. It begins with silence, the kind that gathers in the air before a storm. When the world seems to lean in and listen, the sky darkens, not just in color but in mood, as if the heavens are drawing breath. Deep inside a cloud, invisible forces start to move. Water droplets rise and fall, colliding with ice crystals in a frenzy of motion. Each tiny impact steals or gives an electron, separating charges the way a magnet splits north from south. The top of the cloud grows positive, the base heavy with negative energy. The tension builds, silent and unseen, until the air itself trembles under the strain. Somewhere between cloud and ground, something impossible begins to take shape. Lightning is not a single strike, but a process, an unfolding, a decision. The air is an insulator, reluctant to conduct electricity. But as the imbalance grows, the molecules stretch to their limit. Then, suddenly, they surrender. A channel of ionized air forms in jagged steps, each one reaching a little farther toward balance. It moves too fast for eyes to see, branching, searching, mapping possible routes. These leaders, as scientists call them, are like thoughts flickering ideas of where the energy might go. When one of them finally connects with the opposite charge below, the circuit closes, and all that stored tension releases in an instant. A blinding pulse races through the channel, heating it to 50,000 degrees, 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. The air explodes outward, and the thunder that follows is simply the sound of space itself being forced to expand. Every bolt is a signature no two exactly the same. Some flash for the briefest heartbeat. Others dance across the sky in looping veins, illuminating miles of cloud at once. Sometimes they strike sideways, crawling across the horizon like luminous rivers. Sometimes they shoot upward, back toward the stars, in forms we call sprites and jets. And sometimes, more rarely, lightning decides not to follow the rules at all. There are accounts, centuries old, of glowing spheres, appearing during storms, floating orbs of light that move slowly through the air, humming, pulsing, drifting like curious minds. Sailors called them Fire of St. Elmo. Today we call them ball lightning, though naming them hasn't helped us understand them. They've been seen rolling down chimneys, gliding through walls, hovering over fields, even bouncing along the decks of ships. Most last only a few seconds before vanishing with a soft pop or a violent explosion. Scientists have tried to recreate them in labs, with mixed success. Some think they are plasma held together by electromagnetic fields. Others believe they are vaporized particles of silicon burning in the air. Yet none of the theories fully explain how something so delicate can exist inside chaos. It's as if the storm itself dreams for a moment, forming something alive, then letting it go. Lightning doesn't need rain to be born. It can ignite above volcanoes, where ash and rock grind together in explosive updrafts, stripping electrons in furious collisions. These are volcanic lightning storms, rare, spectacular, and terrifying. Imagine a mountain erupting, spewing molten rock and smoke, while the sky above it shatters into light. Every flash reveals a frozen frame of the eruption, a strobe of creation and destruction. The ash carries its own static charge, building and releasing in bursts that rival the fiercest tempests. In those moments, the boundary between earth and sky dissolves. Fire and air become one. Despite centuries of study, lightning still refuses to reveal all its secrets. We can measure its voltage, trace its path, capture it on high-speed cameras, and still, the question of how it begins, how that first microscopic spark forms in the heavy air, remains unsolved. It's not just a matter of physics, it's a mystery of thresholds. Somewhere, in the crowded chaos of molecules, a single one gives way, and the rest follow. Why here? Why now? No one knows. Perhaps the air itself thinks, in a way too subtle for us to perceive. Some cultures once believed lightning was alive, a spirit, a god, a messenger. The Greeks gave it to Zeus, the Norse to Thor, the Japanese to Raijin. Even now, with satellites and sensors, we still feel its presence as something more than science. When lightning strikes close, the world seems to pause. The hairs on your arms rise, the air smells sharp and metallic, and every instinct tells you that something immense is near. The flash is over in an instant, but the memory lingers like a pulse behind the eyes. For a moment, you've seen raw energy made visible, nature's synapse, a thought of the planet itself. Lightning doesn't just illuminate the sky, it shapes it. Each strike produces nitrogen oxides, fertilizing soil and oceans, feeding the web of life. It ignites wildfires that renew forests, forges glass from sand, and charges the air with ozone. In the upper atmosphere, flashes of energy connect to electromagnetic waves that ripple outward into space. The Earth, in a sense, is talking to itself, to its atmosphere, to the cosmos beyond. Every storm is part of that ongoing conversation. When you watch lightning from afar, it feels distant, untouchable. But every bolt begins with the same elements that surround you now: the air you breathe, the water in your lungs, the heat of your own body. You are made of the same energy that leaps between clouds, the same electrons that race through the sky. The difference is only in scale, in intensity. Lightning is the world remembering what it's made of. There's a moment, just after the flash, when darkness returns but still seems lit from within. The air hums faintly, a low vibration beneath the silence. It's the afterimage of energy, fading but not gone. The clouds churn on, alive with movement, and somewhere, out of sight, another imbalance begins to form. The cycle repeats: charge and release, tension and relief, thought and expression. The sky thinks in lightning the way a heart thinks in beats. If you've ever stood outside in a storm, you know the feeling, that electric anticipation, that pause before the world breaks open. It's not fear exactly, it's awareness. Every drop of rain, every gust of wind feels connected, charged, alive. You can almost sense the invisible wires stretching between the ground and the clouds, waiting to be lit. And when the flash comes white, fierce, absolute, it's like the sky is taking a photograph of itself, capturing for one instant the full brilliance of being alive. Then the thunder rolls, long and low, and the air returns to stillness. The storm moves on, but somewhere inside the clouds, unseen, the next thought is already forming. Thunder begins as light. Every flash of lightning carves a path through the air, so hot that molecules tear apart, leaving behind a channel of plasma. The air expands faster than sound can escape, and the result is a shockwave, the voice of the storm. That sound doesn't come from the sky at once. It travels in ripples, folding and bending, reshaped by distance and wind. What we hear as a deep, rolling growl is really a single explosion stretched out in space and time, echoing down invisible corridors of air. Up close, thunder can split the air like a scream. It vibrates through your chest and bones, something you feel before you truly hear. But farther away, the violence softens, spreading out until it becomes a murmur, a drumbeat, a slow recitation of the storm's power. The reason it rolls is simple and strange. Lightning is never a single line. It twists and branches, miles long, each section sending its own wave of sound. They overlap, arriving at slightly different times, blurring into one long note that rises and falls like breath. It is the sound of distance itself, how time behaves when it travels through the atmosphere. Sound moves slower than light, slower even than the wind that carries it. For every 5 seconds between flash and rumble, the lightning was a mile away. That gap is a measure of time and space, but also of intimacy. When thunder arrives, it means the storm is near enough to touch you with its voice, but not yet with its hand. You count the seconds without thinking, an old instinct born of both fear and fascination. Every human who has ever watched a storm has done it. It's how we listen to danger and wonder at once. The air itself shapes the tone. Warm air lets sound travel farther. Cold air bends it back to the ground. That's why thunder can vanish into silence on summer nights, or roll for ages through winter skies. Wind, too, sculpts its path. When the breeze moves in the same direction as the sound, it stretches the waves outward, carrying them across valleys and lakes. Against the wind, the rumble fades faster, swallowed by turbulence. Sometimes, when conditions are right, the sound doesn't fade at all. It travels for hundreds of miles, bouncing between layers of the atmosphere like a secret relayed from cloud to cloud. People have heard a single storm from another continent. In those rare conditions, the world becomes an instrument. The sky and ground reflect sound back and forth, turning the air into a resonating chamber. The thunder rolls not because it's moving, but because the world itself is still vibrating. Each echo softens, scattering into lower tones, until all that remains is a deep hum at the edge of perception. Animals sense it first. Birds fall silent. Dogs tremble. Insects still their wings. The earth listens before we do. There is a kind of poetry in how thunder decays. At first it's all force, then it falls into rhythm, then into memory. The sound doesn't disappear. It becomes part of the background, folded into the murmuring of wind and rain. Every storm has its own cadence, its own voice. Some storms speak in short bursts, quick and sharp, like arguments. Others drag their sentences long, slow, rolling endlessly across the landscape like an ancient chant. The longer you listen, the more it feels like language not human, but planetary. In some places, the sound is shaped by terrain. Mountains break the waves into fragments, sending echoes tumbling through valleys. Plains stretch them out, giving the rumble time to unfurl. Over water, thunder becomes vast, suspended above the surface in perfect clarity. You can hear the storm's skeleton, then the hard crack of the initial strike, followed by the long breath of air filling in behind it. The ocean amplifies it, turning sky and sea into mirrors of vibration. When lightning strikes nearby, the thunder comes too fast to separate. It feels like being inside the sound, as though the atmosphere itself is a drum and you are standing on its skin. There's a moment when the world goes completely white, then everything collapses into noise, raw, total, overwhelming. And then it's gone, leaving a silence so deep it seems to hum. In that instant, the air has remembered what power feels like. What's remarkable is that thunder is older than we are, older than trees, older even than the first rain. Wherever lightning has ever struck, thunder has followed. On other worlds, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, it exists too, shaped by alien skies but bound by the same physics. Sound following light, shock following spark. A conversation written into the laws of nature. We think of storms as chaos, but thunder reveals their order. Each sound tells a story about distance, temperature, and the shape of the air. It's data and beauty woven together, a kind of cosmic heartbeat that lets us feel the sky's pulse through our own bones. That's why people still stand at windows during storms, why we hush children and pets, why we listen even when we're afraid. We're wired to. Somewhere deep in the brain, something ancient stirs when the world growls. The Next time it happens, when the clouds bruise purple and the air tightens with electricity, don't flinch from it. Open a window. Feel the vibration under your feet. Watch for the flash. Count the heartbeats until the thunder arrives. In those few seconds, you are suspended between two speeds of the universe, light racing ahead, sound following faithfully behind. And when the rumble finally reaches you, rolling low and endless across the landscape, remember that you're hearing more than noise. You're hearing the atmosphere itself breathe out, telling you that it's alive. Every drop of rain that touches your skin has been here before. It has wandered through deep time, across oceans, through clouds, into rivers, and back again. The water in tonight's storm may once have fallen as snow on the back of a mammoth, or as dew on the first blades of grass. It may have drifted inside a glacier for 1,000 years, or circled the equator in vapor, unseen. Rain is not a single event. It is a story without beginning or end, written in cycles and carried on the breath of the planet. The journey begins where warmth meets cold. When sunlight heats the sea, molecules of water slip free, rising invisibly into the air. They move upward in slow spirals, joining others until the sky grows heavy with unseen vapor. As the air cools, the molecules cluster around tiny particles, dust, salt, pollen, even fragments of meteor ash. These are the seeds of clouds, the quiet scaffolding upon which droplets form. One by one, condensation builds, transforming invisible gas into suspended liquid. Billions of these droplets gather until the cloud becomes thick enough to shade the world below. Inside those clouds, a delicate choreography begins. Droplets collide, merge, and grow, drawn together by turbulence and gravity. The smallest evaporate, feeding the larger ones. It's a kind of atmospheric evolution, with winners and losers in every heartbeat. When a droplet becomes too heavy to stay aloft, it begins its fall, a long, slow descent through layers of air, each one with its own temperature, pressure, and wind. Some droplets evaporate before they ever reach the ground. Others survive, weaving through currents, stretching into teardrops as they fall. By the time they strike the earth, they've been reshaped by countless invisible hands. The sound of rain is the language of this motion made audible. A gentle drizzle speaks softly, the whisper of tiny impacts on leaves and soil. Heavier rain deepens the tone, striking rooftops and streets with rhythmic precision. Each drop carries its own pitch, its own note in the symphony of water returning home. The scent that rises after petrichor is more than nostalgia. It's the perfume of renewal. When rain hits dry earth, it releases oils from plants and molecules called geosmin, produced by soil-dwelling bacteria that have existed for hundreds of millions of years. You're smelling life itself, ancient and ongoing, carried upward by the first touch of water. Rain feeds every living thing. It shapes mountains, fills rivers, nourishes forests. It digs canyons grain by grain, softens deserts, erases footprints, and begins again. Yet for all its gentleness, it is also relentless. A single drop is nothing, but trillions carve the world. Every landscape you know has been drawn by falling water. Every stone has been touched by it, smoothed by time. If you could follow a single drop backward, its path would lead you through endless transformations. Perhaps it once rested in the curve of a leaf, shining in dawn light before vanishing into air. Maybe it sank into soil, pulled into the roots of a tree, then exhaled again through its leaves. It might have frozen in an ancient glacier, trapped in blue ice while mammoths roamed above. It could have fallen as snow onto the shell of a dinosaur, melted, flowed into a stream, evaporated, risen again. The same molecules you drink tonight have traveled through every epoch of the earth. Water does not die. It only changes shape. Rain connects everything. When it falls on the ocean, it merges with the great currents that carry heat around the globe. When it falls on land, it seeps into aquifers, joins rivers, or vanishes into mist. Some of it will find its way back to the clouds within days. Some will linger underground for centuries. The journey is slow, patient, infinite. Even as one storm ends, another is already forming elsewhere, drawn from the same pool of planetary breath. There is an intimacy in this cycle. The rain that cools your face tonight could have fallen on distant mountains this morning or drifted for months across the sea. It could carry a trace of volcano ash, sea salt, or pollen from forests far away. When you taste it, you are tasting geography itself, the mingling of worlds. Every drop holds the fingerprint of its travels. And yet, for all we know, there is still mystery in the falling. Why clouds release their water in one place and not another, why a storm pauses above a valley or passes over in silence, are questions of infinite complexity. The physics are precise, but the behavior is alive, improvisational. The atmosphere breathes with mood and memory, deciding in its own quiet way where to let go. When the rain finally ends, it doesn't disappear. It sinks into the ground, trickles toward streams, hides under stones. It collects in puddles where insects skate or in hollows where reflections bloom. Some of it will evaporate before morning, returning to the air like a sigh. Some will travel underground for years before rising again as a spring. Nothing is lost. The sky is simply borrowing what it once gave. If you step outside after the storm, you can feel the world exhale. The air is cooler, cleaner, saturated with scent. Surfaces glisten as though newly made. It's easy to forget how many times this has happened before. How many millions of storms have washed the same soil, fed the same rivers, filled the same seas. Rain is both ancient and newborn, repeating itself endlessly, but never the same way twice. And somewhere, high above, the next cloud is already forming. Warm air rises, carrying vapor upward, invisible but certain. The droplets gather, their weight building quietly, patiently, waiting for the moment they'll fall again. And when they do, they'll complete another turn in a cycle older than life itself. A drop leaving the sky tonight might not touch the ground until it has drifted halfway around the world. But sooner or later, it will. It always does. The earth never stops breathing water, and we never stop being part of its exhale. Snow begins as silence. Long before it touches the ground, it forms in the cold heart of a cloud, where vapor slows and gathers around invisible seeds of dust or salt. In that stillness, something miraculous happens. Water, the shapeless traveler, begins to build order. It arranges itself into six-fold symmetry, each molecule locking into place like music written in crystal. Every snowflake is a brief perfection, delicate, transient, unique, not in chaos, but in pattern. The temperature, humidity, and even the tiniest tremor of air determine its shape. Some grow into thin, flat stars. Others become columns, needles, or feathery dendrites that drift and catch the light like frozen lace. No two are truly identical, because the path each takes through the atmosphere is never the same. When snow falls, it doesn't fall as flakes. It falls as an orchestra of light. The shapes spin and dance, colliding and separating in a ballet choreographed by air. From afar, it looks soft, weightless, but each flake is a structure of precision, a geometry built from the simplest ingredient on Earth. Ice forms not because the cold demands it, but because water remembers how to make beauty out of constraint. The fractal arms of each crystal echo across scales, from microscopic branches to the drifted fields below. What we see as snow is the planet sketching its own symmetry across the land. Sometimes, snow burns blue, not with flame, but with depth. The color hides in the way light moves through ice, scattering shorter wavelengths and swallowing the rest. Deep snow, packed and pure, filters sunlight so that only the bluest shadows remain. The effect is not illusion, it's physics turned to poetry. Walk through a glacier or beneath a thick snowdrift and you'll find yourself surrounded by this quiet radiance, as though the world is lit from within. The color seems to hum, a low and endless note, colder than silence. It's the light of distance, of memory, of something too pure for words. Other times, snow glows with color not its own. In some places, it blushes pink or crimson watermelon snow. It's called painted by tiny algae that sleep through winter frozen in the ice. When the sun returns, they awaken, blooming inside the snowfields and staining them as they breathe. To the eye, it's strange and beautiful. To the snow, it's a reminder that even in the coldest corners, life persists. Under microscopes, those pink grains shimmer with pigment, catching the light like dust from another planet. And then there is diamond dust, the snow that never falls. In the stillest air, when the temperature plunges and the sky is clear, ice crystals form directly from vapor, suspended weightless in the air. They drift without wind, turning the world into a living prism. Streetlights become halos, stars double in the sky, and every breath feels luminous. Each particle of diamond dust is smaller than a grain of sand, but together they create a shimmer that feels infinite. It is as though the air itself has decided to freeze its own sparkle. Freezing fog is another kind of quiet magic. It gathers near the ground, where the cold lingers and moisture hovers between states. When it meets a branch, a wire, or a single blade of grass, it transforms instantly, coating every surface in rime. The world wakes white, crystalline, and still. Every twig and leaf becomes an ornament of ice, every fence and rooftop a sculpture of frost. The fog doesn't fall like snow. It grows outward, reaching for edges, wrapping everything in filigree. If you stand close enough, you can hear it forming the faint crackle of water turning to crystal in mid-air. It is the sound of transformation made visible. Snow has moods, like weather within weather. There is the snow that drifts, falling in patient silence, reshaping everything with softness. There is the snow that screams blizzards that move sideways, devouring horizon and sound. There is the snow that sparkles in sunlight, the snow that crunches underfoot, the snow that melts on your tongue and tastes faintly of sky. Each one is part of the same endless cycle, water trading one shape for another, performing its slow alchemy of change. Even as it freezes, it remains alive in motion, molecules vibrating with the energy they cannot fully surrender. If you hold a snowflake in your palm, it disappears almost instantly. The warmth of your skin is enough to undo hours of delicate architecture. Yet in that instant, you are touching something ancient, the same molecules that once drifted in prehistoric clouds, that froze and thawed and fell again through millennia. Snow doesn't die when it melts. It becomes part of the river, the ocean, the air. It will rise again, rebuild itself, and fall once more, over and over, rewriting the same story in infinite variations. In the right light, snow doesn't just cover the world, it reveals it. The land beneath seems sharper, the air clearer, the sky more honest. Every sound is softened, absorbed by the flakes, until only your heartbeat remains. Even night feels brighter under snow, as though darkness itself is reflecting. For a while, the world seems paused, caught between breaths. When morning comes and sunlight touches the frozen ground, the ice begins to sing, not with voice, but with light. Each crystal refracts the sun into a spectrum, scattering fragments of day across the surface of the earth. You walk through it, leaving tracks that fill almost as soon as they're made. The cold bites, but the beauty is a warmth of its own. Somewhere inside the endless falling, the world is reminding itself how to begin again. And if you listen closely, beneath the silence, you can almost hear it, the faint hiss of air turning to crystal, the whisper of snow burning blue. Wind begins as difference, a shift in temperature, a contrast in pressure, a quiet imbalance that the earth moves to correct. Warm air rises, cool air sinks, and in that eternal dance, the invisible begins to move. From those small beginnings come breezes that brush the surface of oceans, whisper through canyons, and bend forests into motion. Left long enough, they grow into trade winds and tempests, hurricanes and cyclones, invisible rivers of motion that circle the globe. Every gust, every sigh of air, is part of a system older than time itself. There's a memory in wind. Each molecule of air has traveled endlessly through lungs and leaves, across mountains and over cities, brushed the faces of strangers and the fur of animals long extinct. The air that moves across your skin tonight could have passed once through the feathers of a migrating bird, or drifted from the Sahara, heavy with dust that began as ancient rock. Wind is not just movement, it is history in motion. It carries the scent of oceans, the warmth of deserts, the cool breath of forests, and traces of smoke from fires half a world away. To breathe is to share in that history, to inhale the sum of countless journeys. Trade winds are the planet's pulse, steady, dependable, born of heat and rotation. They sweep westward across the tropics, guiding ships for centuries and shaping climates across continents. The air near the equator warms, rises, and drifts toward the poles, while cooler air rushes in to take its place, creating vast loops of circulation. These winds have carried explorers and storms alike, have shaped weather patterns and carved desert dunes. Even now, satellites trace their unbroken flow across the oceans, ribbons of movement that never stop, powered by sunlight and the turning of the earth. But not all winds are steady. Some are born in chaos, in the wild spin of imbalance. Tornadoes form when warm, moist air collides with dry, cold air, twisting into spirals of violence. Within seconds, the sky organizes itself into rotation, a column of fury reaching from cloud to ground. Inside that funnel, pressure drops, air screams, and debris becomes weightless. It's not just destruction. It's the atmosphere attempting to find equilibrium in its most violent form. Even within the terror, there is structure, logic, physics so precise it borders on choreography. When the storm passes, what remains is silence, the world holding its breath after remembering how fragile balance can be. Smaller, gentler vortices form too. Dust devils dance across dry plains, born from the same principles on a smaller scale. They spiral upward, carrying dust and seeds, bits of sand and stories from one patch of earth to another. In deserts, they can last for minutes, tracing elegant loops before dissolving into stillness. Watch one closely, and you'll see that it's not a thing but a pattern, a shape that exists only while energy moves through it. When the air calms, it vanishes, leaving behind only what it carried. Like memory, its motion preserved in brief form. Wind is the courier of life. It carries pollen between flowers, spreads seeds far beyond the reach of roots, fairies, spores, and salt and scent. Entire ecosystems depend on its generosity. The trade winds bring moisture inland, feeding rainforests that breathe for the planet. The same winds lift desert dust into the sky, scattering minerals that fall as nourishment for distant jungles and oceans. What seems destructive in one place becomes essential in another. The Sahara feeds the Amazon. The Pacific cools the Arctic. Nothing moves alone. Across the oceans, the great winds shape waves that travel for thousands of miles before touching a shore. Over land, they sculpt sand into dunes, carve rock into curves, polish mountains over eons. The wind's fingerprints are everywhere, from the smooth stones of riverbeds to the rippled faces of dunes that shift like living things. It is both creator and eraser, carving while it carries away. When you stand in a canyon and hear air moving through stone, that sound is the memory of its own making. There are winds that whisper and winds that roar. The Mistral of France, the Sirocco from Africa, the Santa Ana that sweeps through California. They each have their own temperament, their own myths. People have given them names because they feel alive, moody, sentient. Some bring warmth, others madness. Entire cultures have learned to read them, to predict harvests, migrations, even moods by the sound of air through trees. The wind is both message and messenger, and though it can't speak, it communicates in touch, scent, and rhythm. In its quietest form, wind is almost tender, the evening breeze that stirs curtains, the gentle current that ripples water at dawn. These are the earth's exhalations. They move heat from one place to another, smoothing the rough edges of climate, cooling the skin of oceans and the breath of forests. Without wind, the planet would stagnate, the seas would stratify, the air would still, and the pulse of weather would cease. Everything alive depends on this constant exchange, this invisible hand that stirs the world. Sometimes, at night, when the air moves softly through trees or across an open field, you can feel its history. There's a texture to it, a faint echo of everywhere it's been. You breathe it in, and it becomes part of you, just as it has been part of everything that ever lived. The molecules that fill your lungs tonight may one day pass through the leaves of a future forest or the feathers of a bird not yet born. Wind remembers because it never stops moving. It is the memory of the planet made visible, the whisper of connection that ties every place, every creature, every moment together. And even when the air feels still, it isn't. It's only resting, gathering, waiting for the next difference, for the next breath of the world. Every storm begins as a whisper, a patch of warm ocean, a flicker of rising air, a small imbalance in the great breathing of the planet. Most of these disturbances vanish before they're born, dissolved by wind or swallowed by calm seas. But sometimes, conditions align with impossible precision. Heat gathers, moisture thickens, and air begins to turn. The rotation starts gently at first, a slow spiral coaxed by the Earth's spin, and then builds momentum. What begins as a breath becomes a vortex. The storm takes shape like a living thing. A hurricane or cyclone, or typhoon, depending on where you stand, isn't chaos, though it feels that way from the ground. It's an organism of motion and symmetry, a self-sustaining engine built from warmth and water. Sunlight heats the sea, and the sea returns the favor by feeding the sky. Evaporated moisture rises, cools, condenses into clouds, and releases heat as it transforms. That heat fuels the air around it, pulling more vapor upward, accelerating the rotation. The storm eats energy and exudes order. It builds walls of wind, towers of vapor, a cathedral of cloud that can stretch 500 miles across. From above, it looks almost peaceful. White spirals, curling in perfect geometry, the kind of beauty only power can make. The outer bands are wild and uneven, but near the center, the pattern sharpens. The winds align into a ring that spins faster and faster, enclosing a hollow heart. Inside that circle lies the eye, the calm in the chaos. Air sinks there instead of rising, clearing the clouds, flattening the sea. Step into that space, and the world transforms. The sky is blue, the water strangely still. You can see sunlight through the high walls of clouds surrounding you, vast and white and silent. It feels unreal, like standing inside a thought that has stopped thinking. But that peace is temporary. On the far edge, the wall of wind waits. Around the eye, the storm's true fury roars. Wind speeds can exceed 150 miles per hour, tearing roofs from houses, trees from earth, waves from the sea itself. Rain falls not downward but sideways, carried in sheets that cut the air. The storm surge water pushed ahead by the relentless wind rises over coastlines, swallowing everything in its path. Yet even in destruction, there is balance. The spiral shape isn't random. It's a natural consequence of rotation and pressure. The Coriolis force shaping air into curves that conserve energy. Nature doesn't rage. It recalibrates. Every storm breathes in cycles. As it drifts across the ocean, it grows and wanes, feeding on warmth, weakening in cooler waters. The moment it touches land, its engine begins to fail. Without the sea's heat, the towering clouds collapse. The winds slow, the eye closes, and the storm dies in fragments, rain lingering over valleys, thunder dissolving into haze. But even as it fades, it gives. The rain that floods rivers also replenishes soil. The churned seawater brings nutrients from the deep, feeding life long after the winds have passed. To the planet, storms are not disasters. They are circulation, heat redistributed, equilibrium restored. The same forces that topple buildings also shape climates, drive ocean currents, and balance temperature between the equator and poles. In their vastness, they are both destroyer and healer, chaos and correction at once. Humanity experiences the first half of that equation most intensely, but the Earth knows the full rhythm. It has always known it. From space, a hurricane is a moving masterpiece, a swirl of white against blue, elegant and terrible. Astronauts describe watching them in awe, an entire weather system spinning with mathematical grace, the eye glinting like a jewel at its center. They say it feels alive, aware even, a pulse of the planet made visible. Each one has its own personality. Some grow vast and slow, their arms reaching across entire seas. Others are compact, ferocious, tightly wound with kinetic intent. They're shaped by the same laws but express them differently, like variations on the same haunting theme. Before satellites, people read the signs by instinct. They watch the color of the sky, the behavior of birds, the sudden stillness of air before the first gust. Myths called these storms gods, dragons, tempests sent by unseen hands. And perhaps that wasn't wrong. Every storm carries the weight of something larger than comprehension, a reminder that the world we inhabit is alive in ways beyond our control. Even now, with models and radar and data flowing in real time, we still feel small before that spiral. Knowledge has not diminished the wonder. When the storm finally passes, the world feels newly made. The air smells raw, metallic, alive. Branches scatter across wet streets, clouds drift apart like smoke, and sunlight returns hesitantly, turning puddles into mirrors. People step outside and listen to the quiet, stunned by its depth. It's the hush that follows power, the space where the earth exhales after reminding us how vast it is. In that silence, there's no anger, only memory. Somewhere far away, another patch of warm sea is waiting. The air above it trembles slightly, a hint of motion where calm once lived. The process begins again, invisible at first, gathering strength one molecule at a time. Storms never truly end. They only move, transform, evolve. The same water that fueled one tempest will rise again to feed another. The same heat that tore through one sky will ignite a new one. The planet remembers how to spin its art, and when the next hurricane blooms into being, spiraling, brilliant, terrible, it will not be chaos but choreography, a dance of wind and water, destruction and creation, all within the same exquisite symmetry. The eye will form once more, calm and blue, a single breath of peace held inside the whirling heart of the world. Above the world of sleep and sound, where the air thins and silence begins, the sky sometimes burns with colors too delicate to belong to day. Curtains of green ripple over the poles, red edges flicker, violet trails shimmer like ink spilled across the horizon. These are the aurora's ghost lights born of the sun's restless breath. They drift and pulse, alive and electric, reminders that even in darkness, the sky is awake. It begins far from Earth, where the sun releases a constant stream of charged particles, the solar wind. They travel for days through the void, invisible but full of energy, until they meet the magnetic shield surrounding our planet. The field bends them, traps them, and funnels them toward the poles, where the atmosphere is thin enough for light to bloom. When those particles collide with atoms of oxygen and nitrogen high above, they excite them, shaking loose photons that spill downward in waves of color. Green for oxygen, red for the rarer kind at higher altitudes, blue and purple for nitrogen. The result is not fire, not reflection, but conversation, solar wind, speaking to magnetic field, the planet answering in light. The aurora moves with intention but never repeats itself. It curls and drifts, unfurls like silk, sometimes racing from horizon to horizon, sometimes pausing to shimmer in place. Scientists can measure its energy, map its patterns, but the experience of seeing one defies precision. It feels sentient, like something watching back. The light appears soundless, yet people swear they've heard whispers, a faint crackle or hiss, as though the sky were sighing. Instruments suggest the noise is real, an electrostatic murmur created when charged particles meet the air. The planet hums while it paints. In the upper reaches of storms, other lights flicker briefer, stranger cousins of the aurora. They are called sprites and blue jets, phenomena so fleeting they eluded proof for centuries. Sprites bloom above thunderheads in thin, ghostly shapes, red tendrils stretching upward like roots in reverse. They flash for milliseconds, too fast for the naked eye to catch fully, but when slowed, they reveal towering columns of fire-colored light, 20 miles tall. They are born from the electric surge of lightning, released upward instead of down. Blue jets, their deeper-hued counterparts, burst from the tops of storms like spears racing toward the edge of space. These lights are not storms themselves, but exhalations, brief expressions of the power that storms cannot contain. Together, auroras and sprites and jets form a secret world above the clouds, a weather of light. For most of history, humans didn't know this realm existed. They saw lightning strike the ground, but not its echoes in the upper air. They saw stars, but not the glowing rivers that connect them to Earth. Only recently, with cameras sensitive enough to catch the flicker, have we begun to glimpse what happens in the space between atmosphere and vacuum. It's a realm of plasma, where magnetism dances with electricity, where the laws of weather meet the physics of stars. From the ground, these lights feel personal. They stretch across the horizon like thought made visible, like dreams escaping into the air. In the Arctic, travelers have long told stories of souls moving in the sky, ancestors speaking in color. Some believed the lights were spirits playing, chasing each other through the night. Others saw omens, guides, warnings. Even now, when we understand the science, the wonder doesn't fade. Knowledge and awe are not opposites. They are partners, like charge and field, pulling toward each other. The atmosphere itself glows faintly, even when no aurora is present. This is airglow, a constant, quiet radiance caused by atoms releasing energy absorbed during the day. It's the sky's memory of sunlight, visible only in perfect darkness. Look up from the desert or an open sea, far from cities, and you might see it, a faint band of green or orange wrapping the horizon. The night is never truly black. The world itself is luminous, breathing out the light it once took in. Sometimes, astronauts describe the view from orbit as a living halo, the Earth wrapped in a thin, glowing veil, auroras swirling near the poles, lightning flickering over storms, sprites leaping upward in crimson bursts. From that height, the planet looks alive, its atmosphere pulsing like the aura of a great heart. The lights are not decoration. They are expression, evidence of motion and magnetism and breath. The same magnetic field that protects us from solar storms also allows this beauty to bloom. It is the paradox of creation through defense, art born of survival. There's something deeply human about our fascination with these lights. We see movement in the stillness, meaning in the pattern. The ancients watched auroras and invented gods. Modern scientists record them and build equations. Both are acts of reverence. To witness the sky glowing is to glimpse the machinery of the cosmos made visible, to feel both the vulnerability and the endurance of our small blue world. The light above us is not decoration, it's communication, a signal that we are part of something vast and electrified and alive. When the aurora fades, it doesn't end. The particles disperse, the magnetosphere quiets, and the night returns to its darker rhythm. But the air still hums faintly with charge, and the earth continues to turn into the wind of the sun. Somewhere, unseen, another surge is already on its way, carried across the emptiness at unimaginable speed. Soon it will reach us, and the sky will wake again, unfolding its luminous banners over the poles. The colors will rise and ripple, electric and eternal, as the world whispers once more in light. Light never travels in a straight line for long. It bends, refracts, scatters, splits, dancing through air that is never still, through layers of heat and cold, moisture and ice. The world we see is not a fixed image but a shimmer, an illusion shaped by the atmosphere's constant play. Every beam of sunlight that reaches your eye has been touched by weather. The air itself is a lens, and sometimes, when the conditions are just right, it becomes an artist. Halos are among its quietest creations. They form when sunlight passes through high, thin cirrostratus clouds, filled with ice crystals shaped like tiny prisms. Each crystal bends the light at a perfect angle, 22 degrees, and together they draw a ring around the sun. To the eye, it looks like the heavens have grown a crown, pale and spectral, sometimes edged with faint color. The circle seems impossibly precise, but it's born of randomness. Countless crystals drifting, turning, falling, each one aligning for only a moment before tumbling away. Halos don't last long, but while they do, they remind you that even the most ordinary sunlight hides geometry and grace. Sundogs are smaller, rarer, and stranger, two bright points of light that hover to either side of the sun, like distant lanterns. They shimmer with rainbow hues, red nearest the sun, blue outward, created by the same ice prisms that form halos. But sundogs appear only when those crystals align horizontally, catching light at just the right angle. They rise and fall with the sun, following it across the sky like loyal companions. Travelers once took them as omens, a doubling of the sun itself, a celestial mirror. Scientists now call them parhelia, but the name doesn't make them less mysterious. When you see one, it feels as though the sky has multiplied its own star, just to remind you how easily perception can be bent. Rainbows are the most familiar of these illusions, yet they remain the most impossible to explain to the heart. A rainbow isn't an object you can approach, it's an interaction, a relationship between light, water, and your position in space. Sunlight enters a raindrop, bends, reflects off the back, and exits split into colors. Each color leaves at a slightly different angle, so what you see is not one arc, but millions of raindrops refracting simultaneously, each creating a single thread of color just for you. Move an inch, and the rainbow changes. No two people ever see the same one. Its shape is an illusion too. The arc we see is only part of a circle, the rest hidden below the horizon. From the air, pilots see rainbows as full rings, perfect and endless. The colors fade not because they end, but because our eyes can't hold them all at once. Sometimes, rainbows come doubled, the inner bright, the outer fainter, reversed in color. Between them lies a darker band, where no light returns at the right angle. Even in light, there are boundaries. There are icebows too, cousins of the rainbow, made not of raindrops but of ice crystals floating in cold air. Their colors are muted, ghostly, as if remembered rather than seen. In polar skies, they can surround the sun with arcs and circles, halos within halos, the air itself layered in color. For those who live under them, the sky must feel alive with meaning. The strangest illusions are those that seem to reshape the world itself. On hot roads and desert horizons, heat bends light into pools of false water mirages. They happen when the ground's heat warms the air just above it, while the layers higher up remain cool. Light bends as it passes through these gradients, curving upward so that you see the reflection of the sky on the ground. It looks like shimmering water, distant and unreachable. Travelers once followed such visions into emptiness, chasing what was never there. But a mirage is not deception, it's truth distorted by temperature. The air is showing you its structure, revealing the invisible gradient between hot and cool, density and emptiness. You're not seeing water. You're seeing the shape of the heat itself. There are colder mirages too, in polar regions where temperature inversions reverse the effect. Light bends downward instead, lifting distant ships or islands into the air. The phenomenon is called a superior mirage, and it can make the horizon fold over itself. Mountains float like ghosts. Ships sail above the sea. In the Arctic, explorers once called them Fata Morgana, after the sorceress of legend who conjured illusions from mist. Even now, the name feels right. Nature doesn't lie, but it loves to imagine. Every trick of light in the atmosphere is a reminder that our eyes do not see the world directly. They see its conversation with air. Sunlight scatters through molecules of nitrogen and oxygen, making the sky blue. At dawn and dusk, the long path through the thickened atmosphere filters the blue away, leaving only the reds and golds. The same refraction that gives us sunsets also gives us halos, sundogs, mirages. It's all part of the same spectrum of wonder, the endless dialogue between light and matter. Sometimes, in the right kind of cold, the entire sky fills with ice, halos, circles, arcs, pillars, each one reflecting and refracting the same source of light. The sun multiplies itself into dozens of twins, and even the moon can wear a halo when its light is strong enough. People step outside and stare upward, silent, because words feel too small for it. These illusions are fleeting, dissolving as soon as the air warms, as soon as the crystals melt or fall. But for those few minutes, the heavens look closer to truth, fluid, dynamic, alive. Light bends because it must. It cannot pass through air, water, or ice without being changed. And maybe that's the secret hidden in every illusion, that beauty is not found in perfection, but in distortion. The rainbow's arc, the halo's ring, the shimmer on hot pavement, all are moments when the universe reveals that it, too, is made of movement and impermanence. Nothing holds still, not even sunlight. The sky is painting constantly, not with pigment, but with possibility. And we, standing beneath it, are part of that living canvas, our eyes catching what the world decides, for an instant, to show. There are places on earth where rain is a rumor, where years pass beneath a cloudless sky and the horizon never changes. In these places, the air itself feels ancient, stripped bare of moisture, memory, and sound. The deserts that reign once a century exist on the edge of endurance landscapes sculpted not by water, but by its absence. Their silence is immense. The wind carries sand and light, but no scent of wet earth, no cool breath of storm. To live here, even briefly, is to understand how fragile life can be and how stubborn. The Atacama Desert in Chile is one of these nearly waterless worlds. Parts of it haven't seen measurable rain in hundreds of years. The soil is so dry it mimics Martian regolith. NASA tested rovers here because no place on Earth feels closer to another planet. Yet even in that emptiness, the sky watches and waits. Occasionally, moisture drifts in from the Pacific, thin fogs that sweep across the dunes before burning away. In rare years, an impossible thing happens. A pulse of rain, brief and uneven, just enough to wake what lies sleeping. Seeds buried for decades stir, split, and reach toward the light. Within days, the desert blooms in color. Flowers erupt across the sand, carpeting miles of rock in violet and gold. Then, just as quickly, they vanish again, drying back into dust. Life waits there, not for abundance, but for a single chance to begin. Deserts are full of paradoxes. They seem empty, but every grain of sand holds history. Wind sculpts the dunes endlessly, moving mountains one breath at a time. The same ridge you see today might be gone by next year, reshaped by the invisible patience of air. Temperature swings carve stone into towers and arches, and the stars above seem sharper, closer, because there is nothing left to soften them. Night in the desert feels larger than anywhere else on Earth. The heat drains away, the air chills, and the constellations blaze so clearly it feels as though you could step into them. In that silence, even starlight feels like weather. When rain does come, it's rarely gentle. Dry lightning often arrives first white fire without water, igniting the horizon in quick, electric pulses. The air crackles, ozone thickens, and thunder rolls through mountains that haven't heard it in years. Then, suddenly, the clouds release what they've been holding. It doesn't drizzle, it crashes. The parched ground, hardened by decades of sun, can't absorb the deluge fast enough. Rivers appear out of nowhere, carving paths through valleys, dragging stones and sand in their rush. What was lifeless becomes a torrent, the land remembering for a moment what it felt like to move. Some deserts only bloom at night. In the Namib, fog rolls in from the cold Atlantic, wrapping the dunes in moisture that never falls as rain. Beetles crawl to the tops of sandhills to collect the droplets that condense on their shells. Plants unfurl tiny hairs to catch the same mist, drinking from air instead of soil. Everything that survives here has learned to listen to the faintest hint of water. Their roots run deep, their skins waxy, their lives measured not in seasons but in chances. Even in these extremes, weather finds a way to express itself. There are dust storms that rise like mountains, walls of air and grit that travel hundreds of miles. There are mirages that shimmer in the heat, making the earth look fluid, tricking the eye into seeing oceans that don't exist. There are whirlwinds, devils of dust, that spin themselves from nothing, swirling for minutes before dissolving into stillness. Each of these is a kind of communication, the desert's language of motion in a world that seems still. And then there are the rare rains that transform everything. In the dry valleys of Antarctica, where ice is scarce and wind is constant, snow sometimes falls as powder that never melts. But once in a century, warm air creeps south and rain descends, briefly softening the ancient rock. For a few days, streams flow through the frozen ground, and microbes long dormant awaken beneath the surface. Scientists have found them alive, pulsing with color under microscopes, reborn from what seemed eternal death. Even here, where cold and drought reign side by side, life waits for the sound of rain. To stand in a desert when the first drop falls is to witness the earth exhale. The air changes the scent of petrichor, that deep, mineral perfume, rises from the soil like a memory. Every living thing responds. Insects emerge, birds return, plants that looked like stone unfurl small green mouths. The transformation is so swift it feels like magic, though it's only biology doing what it's always done, seizing the moment before it vanishes. For a few hours, maybe days, the desert lives at full volume. Then the heat returns, the water evaporates, and everything folds back into silence. But something of that life remains, locked in seed or root or memory, waiting for the next century's storm. Deserts remind us that weather isn't only what happens, it's what's withheld. Absence can shape as surely as abundance. In the endless dryness, there's a kind of truth, a purity of motion and stillness. The wind scours, the sun bleaches, and yet life persists, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for its chance to bloom. When the rains finally come, it's not just water that falls, it's time itself, collapsing all the waiting years into a single moment of renewal. The land drinks, the sky clears, and for an instant, the world feels whole again. Then the clouds pass, the silence returns, and the desert continues its long, patient dream, holding within it the memory of every drop that ever fell. Mountains do not move, but the air around them never stops. Every ridge, every slope, every jagged peak reshapes the invisible. When wind meets stone, it's forced to rise, to cool, to condense. What was once unseen becomes cloud. Entire weather systems are born this way, sculpted by terrain as though the earth itself were breathing skyward. From a distance, It looks effortless clouds clinging to summits, curling like smoke. But the physics beneath it is a slow, powerful negotiation between ground and atmosphere. Orographic lift, they call it the act of air being lifted over rising land. It begins with motion, a steady flow of wind sweeping across plains until it meets resistance. The mountain stands like a wall, and the air has no choice but to climb. As it rises, the pressure drops and the temperature falls. Moisture hidden within the air suddenly reveals itself, condensing into droplets that form clouds. Sometimes the cloud hugs the slope, a white shawl around the shoulders of the peak. Sometimes it gathers just above, hovering as if unsure whether to fall or drift away. To those watching from the valley, it looks alive, endlessly forming and unraveling as if the mountain were exhaling. On the windward side, where air rises, the world is green. Rain falls, rivers form, forests flourish. But as the air descends on the leeward slope, it warms again, and the moisture disappears. Deserts bloom in the shadow of abundance. The same mountain that creates rain also denies it. The Andes, the Rockies, the Himalayas all shape their climates in this way, turning geography into weather into life or emptiness. The air doesn't just pass over, it transforms. Sometimes the process becomes art. Lenticular clouds, those smooth, lens-shaped wonders form when air flows steadily over a mountain and begins to oscillate, rising and falling in standing waves on the downwind side. Each crest cools and condenses into a layer of vapor. Each trough warms and clears. The result is a stack of perfect ovals, suspended motionless even as the wind races through them. Pilots call them mountain wave clouds, but from the ground they look more like spacecraft, glowing in the late light with edges rimmed in gold or rose. They appear serene, but they mark turbulence fierce enough to shake airplanes. The calmness is illusion. Within those smooth contours, the air churns violently. Sometimes these clouds linger for hours, unmoving, while the wind below shifts and howls. It's as if the sky itself has found a rhythm so steady it can hold a shape against chaos. Climbers often see them from above, close enough to feel the moisture drift across their faces. The experience is strange, almost spiritual, a reminder that mountains are not static things, but constant interactions between rock and atmosphere. Every ridge hums with wind, every valley funnels it, every peak interrupts its flow. When sunlight strikes these lenticular clouds at dawn or dusk, the effect can be hypnotic. Layers of color ripple through them, violet, amber, crimson shades deepened by the low angle of the sun. The air seems painted, the mountain lit from within. Photographers chase these moments for years, but no camera ever captures their full stillness. There's movement in the stillness, energy trapped in balance. The clouds appear as sculptures of air, carved by invisible hands that never rest. Sometimes, on rare days, the standing waves of wind continue far beyond the mountain itself, forming patterns hundreds of miles downstream. The sky fills with repeating bands of cloud and clear air, a natural rhythm frozen in motion. Glider pilots seek them out, riding the upward waves of lift to soar higher than any engine could carry them. From those heights, the world below seems endless valleys wrapped in mist, rivers threading through shadow, peaks piercing through the clouds they've created. Mountains don't just make clouds, they make stories. Each range has its weather myths, spirits who live in the mists, gods who wear clouds as robes, ancestors whose breath shapes the sky. Long before science named orographic lift, people understood that mountains spoke with the wind. They noticed how fog would cling to the peaks before rain, how the air would grow still before snow. They built temples where clouds touched stone, believing the meeting of sky and earth was sacred. Even now, standing in a high pass as mist curls around your feet, it's hard not to feel the same reverence. In the Himalayas, climbers sometimes find themselves inside clouds that never leave, their tents surrounded by perpetual white. The air feels thick, muffled, as if the world has paused. On days like that, you can sense the balance shifting above the wind, reshaping itself, the mountain breathing in silence. When the clouds finally lift, the sky seems impossibly wide, and sunlight returns with a clarity so sharp it feels like sound. From the plains below, the clouds drift and reform, but to the mountain, they are memory. Every gust, every wave of vapor that passes its slopes carries the imprint of its shape into the atmosphere. The sky over mountains is never the same twice, yet it is always familiar. Patterns recur, rhythms repeat, and the weather learns the contours of the land like a hand learning a face. When you stand at the summit and watch a lenticular cloud form just above your head, you realize that the air is alive with structure, invisible until made visible by moisture. You are watching the planet think, each current and eddy a small decision in the vast mind of weather. The mountain below you doesn't just rise into the air, it teaches the air how to move, and for a moment, you see it, the connection between stone and sky, solid and fluid, earth and breath. The mountain makes its own clouds not because it reaches the heavens, but because the heavens need something to shape themselves against. The air around you is not still, no matter how quiet it seems. It is always pressing, always moving, always arranging itself in invisible patterns that span continents. Every breeze, every storm, every cloud that drifts across the horizon begins with pressure, a word that sounds simple but hides an entire architecture of motion. The atmosphere is an ocean of air, and like any ocean, it has currents, waves, and tides. We live at the bottom of it, feeling its weight without noticing, breathing within its slow, endless choreography. At sea level, the air above each square inch of the earth weighs more than 14 pounds. You don't feel it because you've never known life without it. Pressure doesn't crush us because we are built to match it. Our bodies are tuned to the equilibrium between inside and out. But when that balance shifts, even slightly, the world changes. High pressure brings calm and clarity. Low pressure brings motion, wind, and rain. Between them lies the constant pulse of weather, the endless flow from where air is thickest to where it is thinnest. The sky is always equalizing itself, smoothing its own imbalance, and in doing so, it creates everything we call weather. High-pressure systems are the architects of stillness. The air within them sinks slowly, warming as it compresses, drying as it descends. Clouds cannot form easily in such air. The result is clear skies, steady winds, and a kind of serene visibility that feels almost too pure. On such days, the horizon stretches unbroken, and the light seems sharper, more precise. But even calm has its weight. Beneath high pressure, sound carries differently. The air feels dense, holding silence a little longer before releasing it. Some people feel restless during these long, static days, as though the stillness itself presses inward. The sky, flawless and empty, can feel heavy in its perfection. Low-pressure systems are the opposite: air rising, expanding, cooling, condensing into cloud and storm. They are the engines of movement, pulling moisture upward and spinning wind around their centers. When a low passes overhead, the atmosphere loosens, the boundaries soften. Pressure drops just enough for the body to notice, even if the mind doesn't. Joints ache, headaches bloom, moods tilt. It's not imagination. We are creatures of air as much as of flesh, and when the air itself changes its grip, we respond. Some people feel weary before a storm, as though their blood knows the sky's intentions. Others feel electric, restless, charged with the same energy that builds in the clouds above. Barometers have long been our way of listening to these shifts. A drop in mercury once meant rain on the way. A rise foretold calm. Sailors learned to read the glass like scripture, measuring safety and danger in fractions of an inch. But long before instruments, people felt it. animals still do the sudden flight of birds before a front, the way insects vanish, dogs grow uneasy, fish dive deeper. Pressure is the unseen rhythm of the planet, a pulse that everything alive has learned to sense. It even moves the oceans. Though tides follow the pull of the moon, atmospheric pressure can lift or lower the sea by several inches. A deep low, stretched wide over water, lets the surface rise subtly, while a high presses it down. In storms, this difference can become a surge, a hidden swell that rides beneath the wind. Pressure shapes waves as surely as gravity does, its influence vast yet invisible. For all its invisibility, pressure has texture. You can feel it in the thickness of summer air before a thunderstorm, in the thinness of mountain wind that steals your breath. At high altitudes, the air's grip slackens. Moisture evaporates faster, water boils colder, sound fades sooner. The world feels farther away. It's why climbers speak of the sky as thinner, the silence as deeper. In those places, every heartbeat is a negotiation with air. Down below, in valleys and coastal plains, the weight returns, steady and familiar. The kind of pressure that holds you in place without asking for attention. Even moods drift with pressure. Studies show that falling barometers can trigger fatigue, while rising ones can bring wakefulness or agitation. The mind mirrors the sky in ways we don't fully understand. When pressure is low, thoughts scatter. When it's high, they settle, but grow still, as though waiting. It's no wonder poets and sailors have always described weather as emotion. The two move alike, restless, cyclical, unpredictable, yet somehow rhythmic. From space, you can see the great gyres of air circling the globe. Highs spinning clockwise, lows counterclockwise, each one a vast, slow whirlpool of movement. Clouds trace their paths, outlining invisible structures. The jet stream snakes between them, steering their drift. Our weather is not chaos, it's a living architecture, pressure forming the framework through which all else moves. If you've ever stood outside just before a storm, you know the feeling, the air turning soft, electric, thick with anticipation. The birds go quiet. The wind pauses, then shifts. It's as though the sky inhales. That's pressure, reorganizing itself, pulling energy toward balance. A few hours later, the rain begins, and everything that felt tight or uneasy finally releases. The barometer rises again, and the air lightens. Pressure doesn't demand notice, but it governs everything. It shapes wind and cloud, mood and motion, even the tides beneath the moon. The next time the sky feels heavy, or the horizon unusually bright, remember that you are inside the weather, not beneath it. The air that surrounds you is always alive, always balancing itself, and you are part of that balance. Every sigh, every gust, every moment of calm is the planet breathing through you, the deep, steady calm of pressure holding the world together. There are moments when the world holds its breath. The wind stops, leaves hang motionless, and even the air feels suspended, heavy with a kind of waiting that hums just beneath hearing. It's not silence exactly, silence is empty. This is something denser, a stillness that feels alive, as if the sky itself has paused to listen. Weather has its own tempo, and sometimes that rhythm falters. What comes next is not peace, but an eerie calm that seems to stretch time thin, the quiet between two heartbeats of the planet. This stillness begins with inversion. Normally, warm air rises and cooler air sinks, keeping the atmosphere restless, mixing constantly. But sometimes, the order reverses. A layer of warm air settles over cooler air near the ground, trapping it, sealing it off from motion. The result is an invisible lid over the world. Wind weakens, sound bends, and scents linger longer than they should. You can hear conversations from far away, dogs barking miles off, the hum of a highway that should be too distant to notice. The air acts like glass, reflecting sound instead of letting it escape. Everything feels closer, more intimate, but also unsettling, like living inside an echo. Temperature inversions often form at night when the ground cools quickly and the air above remains warm. In valleys, this trapped air can collect fog, soft and glowing under streetlights. It feels safe at first, cozy, contained, but the calm hides unease. Pollution can't rise through the lid, so the air grows stale, heavy with exhaust, with smoke, with breath. The sky looks low, the horizon closer. You can sense the weight of atmosphere pressing down. Invisible, but tangible. It's the stillness of being sealed in, the quiet of waiting for movement to return. Before a storm, a similar calm sometimes settles. The wind, once restless, suddenly drops away. Birds vanish. The air grows thick and strange, as if holding its own pulse. Pressure falls, but the world feels compressed, muted. You might notice colors sharpen, the greens too vivid, the light too gold. Even your body knows something's coming. Skin tingles, hair lifts, breath shortens. The balance between earth and sky has shifted, and every living thing feels it. The storm gathers not in the clouds but in the quiet, winding itself tight before it breaks. And then it happens, the release. Wind returns, violent and alive. Thunder shatters the suspended time. Rain lashes the ground, and the air, finally freed, roars with motion. The sound of the storm feels almost like relief. Everything moves again. Energy finds its outlet, the sky exhaling what it's held too long. But afterward, when the last drops fade and thunder drifts away, the world falls silent once more. The hush after the storm is different from the one before it. It isn't tense, it's hollowed out, rinsed clean, like the pause after tears. The earth steams, leaves drip, and every sound seems too loud against the still air. It's the quiet of recovery, the atmosphere resetting itself. Inversions and calms like these bend more than sound, they bend perception. Time slows, stretched by monotony and anticipation. Minutes lengthen because nothing changes. The air holds everything in place, smoke curling upward and then flattening, birds flying low, even thoughts seeming to echo inside the mind. Pilots call this kind of air stable, because it resists rising, resists turbulence. But from the ground, it feels like the opposite, unstable in its quiet, unnatural in its perfection. Sometimes, the sky falls silent in winter, when snow begins to fall thickly enough to absorb sound. Each flake carries silence within it, muffling footsteps, swallowing the rustle of wind. In such moments, the world feels distant, softened at every edge. You can hear your own breath more clearly, feel your heartbeat in your ears. The snow turns the air into something physical, like walking through memory. It's not absence, it's fullness. The sky has not stopped. It's simply whispering too softly to hear. Ancient cultures noticed these quiet intervals long before meteorology gave them names. Farmers spoke of weather waiting, sailors of the sleeping sea. They learned that stillness could be a warning, that calm did not always mean safety. But they also found reverence in it, the sense that the world was resetting itself, that the invisible machinery of the air had paused to gather its thoughts. The hush before the storm became a kind of prayer, a breath drawn before thunder's answer. Inversions are most common in places cradled by land valleys, basins, cities wrapped in hills. From above, the lid looks like a shimmer, a faint boundary between air layers. Airplanes sometimes pass through it, climbing from turbulence into sudden tranquility. Pilots describe the shift as shocking. 1 second, the plane shudders and rattles. The next, absolute smoothness. It's the same calm that blankets the world below, stretched now across thousands of feet. The sky is never still, yet here it pretends to be. When the atmosphere finally breaks its spell, when sunlight warms the ground again, or a front stirs the air, the trapped layer lifts, and motion returns. Fog rises, wind stirs leaves, the world exhales. The silence unravels, replaced by the ordinary noise of life. You might not notice it happening. The transition is subtle, unremarkable. But if you pause long enough, you can feel the exact moment the sky begins to breathe again. The calmest skies are not the kindest. They are moments of balance so perfect that nothing dares to move. Yet within that balance lies tension, the waiting, the wait, the echo of motion not yet born. When the sky falls silent, it is not resting. It is remembering how to begin. And when it does, when the first breeze stirs and the air learns to flow again, it feels like time itself has started moving once more. There are storms born not from water, but from fire. When heat rises with enough violence, it pulls the sky into its creation, bending air and ash into forms that mimic thunderheads. Pyrocumulonimbus clouds. They're called fire-made storms. They bloom above wildfires and volcanic eruptions, towering pillars of smoke that climb so high they touch the stratosphere. From below, they look like something ancient returning. Dark columns crowned with white, thunder without rain, lightning born from burning earth. In those moments, the line between destruction and creation blurs. The fire feeds the sky, and the sky answers back. It begins the same way all storms do with rising air. Heat from flames surges upward, carrying ash, soot, and vapor. The higher it climbs, the cooler it becomes, until condensation forms. Steam turns to cloud, smoke turns to structure. Within minutes, a column of chaos organizes itself into beauty. The base boils orange with firelight, while the top spreads into an anvil like any summer thunderstorm. But this one is different. It carries not raindrops, but embers. Inside, ice and ash collide, building electric charge until the first bolt strikes lightning flashing through smoke thick as dusk. The fire has learned to throw its own lightning, igniting new blazes miles away. Volcanoes do this too. When Mount Pinatubo erupted in 1991, the sky above it became alive with lightning, thousands of flashes in minutes, a storm built entirely from ash. Each grain of volcanic dust carried static, rubbing and clashing until the clouds became electrically charged. The air glowed purple and white, thunder echoing over molten rock. To watch such a storm is to see the atmosphere reacting in real time to the Earth's fever, turning energy into spectacle. The sky doesn't resist, it participates. It takes the heat and translates it into weather. In the Australian bushfires of 2019, firestorms reached so high they generated their own wind patterns. The rising columns of hot air grew strong enough to create downdrafts and rotation miniature hurricanes made of flame. Satellites captured them from orbit, their clouds towering 40,000 feet high, spreading smoke across oceans. The fires fed the sky, and the sky carried their memory halfway around the world. In some places, the smoke circled the globe, tinting sunsets in countries that had never smelled the ash. The atmosphere remembers everything. Inside a pyrocumulonimbus, the air churns with particles dust, ice, ash, soot, all colliding, separating, rejoining. Friction builds static charge, and the cloud becomes a battery. When the difference between positive and negative becomes too great, lightning discharges, threading through the column in jagged silence before sound catches up. Each flash illuminates the structure, showing the texture of the rising plume, the rolling convection that mirrors living tissue. In the instant of the strike, you can see the whole cycle of weather evaporation, condensation, precipitation played backward, rewritten in fire. Even rain can fall from these clouds, though it's rare. The heat below is often too fierce, vaporizing moisture before it touches the ground. When drops do survive the descent, they hiss into steam as they strike the flames. The sound is strange, soft, and violent at once. Sometimes, if the storm lasts long enough, the fire begins to feed on itself, the heat generating more lift, the lift creating more wind, the wind spreading the flames that fuel it. It becomes a loop, a weather system sustained by destruction. In that feedback, the atmosphere reveals its indifference. Fire, like water, is simply energy in motion. Ancient peoples must have seen these firestorms and wondered what god they'd angered. A mountain explodes, and the heavens light up, the forest burns, and thunder answers. Even now, with satellites and sensors, the sight feels mythic. There's something primeval in watching the sky behave as if alive, responding not with calm, but with awe. The vocabulary of storms, anvils, towers, mamatas feels too fragile to describe it. What forms above a burning world isn't just weather. It's a reminder that air and earth are not separate. The sky is not an observer. It's a participant. Scientists studying these clouds found that their plumes can inject smoke and soot high enough to affect global climate. The particles linger in the upper atmosphere for months, scattering sunlight, cooling regions far from where the fire began. The earth adjusts itself through the very heat that wounds it. It's a strange symmetry fire, creating the means of its own tempering. The same process happens with volcanic eruptions. Ash and sulfur reach high altitudes, reflecting sunlight back into space, lowering global temperatures for years. The planet resets through extremes. Sometimes, from a distance, the spectacle looks almost serene. The rising column of smoke glows gold at its edges, capped by bright white cloud. Lightning flickers silently inside, a storm contained. But up close, it's chaos, the roar of burning forest, the crackle of static, the air so hot it vibrates. The contrast between that violence and the stillness of the sky above it is almost unbearable. It feels like watching two elements argue. Fire trying to ascend, air trying to dissolve it, neither willing to yield. And yet, there's beauty in it. Not a comforting beauty, but one that demands recognition. It reminds us that weather is not gentle. It is the earth thinking in energy, balancing itself in ways both violent and precise. Every flash of lightning born from flame is proof that the boundary between destruction and creation is thinner than we believe. The storm doesn't choose sides. It only responds. When the fire finally dies and the last ember fades, the cloud above drifts away, its anvil dispersing into evening air. The lightning stops, the smoke thins, and rain, real rain, sometimes follows days later, falling softly over the blackened ground. The sound of it is quiet, almost tender. Steam rises where drops meet ash, the earth cooling itself in slow exhales. And somewhere in that steam, in the damp, dark soil that remains, new seeds wait. They will wake when the balance shifts again, when fire gives way to rain, and the sky, for a moment, remembers how to forgive. The air is never dry, not truly. Even in deserts, even in winter's coldest breath, it carries the ghost of the sea. Every molecule of water vapor suspended in the atmosphere is part of an ancient circulation, an invisible ocean that moves above us as surely as the one that lies below. It drifts between continents and seasons, linking coral reefs to mountain snowfields, rainforests to tundra. We breathe it in without thinking, this unseen tide that wraps the planet. It is the Earth's shared breath, a global exhalation that never ends. Humidity is the measure of how much of that hidden ocean the air can hold. Warm air cradles more of it, cool air less. When the balance tips, when air becomes so saturated it can hold no more, the excess condenses into cloud, and the ocean above begins to fall. Rain is simply the air returning what it borrowed. But before that moment, when vapor is invisible, the sky feels thick with promise. You can sense it on your skin, taste it in your breath, that soft heaviness before a storm. The air becomes almost liquid, heavy and alive, as if it's remembering where it came from. Most of the vapor in the atmosphere begins as sunlight on water. Heat lifts it, molecule by molecule, from the surface of oceans, lakes, and leaves. Each particle that evaporates carries energy with it, storing the warmth of the sun as latent heat. When it condenses again, when a cloud forms or a storm gathers, it releases that energy back into the sky. The weather we experience is this cycle playing endlessly. Heat becoming vapor, vapor becoming cloud, cloud becoming rain, and rain returning to the sea. The planet moves its water the way a heart moves blood, circulating life through evaporation and return. Nowhere is this motion more dramatic than in the monsoon. It is not just a storm, but a seasonal heartbeat, a reversal of wind and pressure so vast it defines the climate of half the world. In summer, the land heats faster than the sea, drawing in moist air that rises, cools, and releases torrents of rain. Rivers swell, fields green, forests breathe out mist. The monsoon is both destruction and renewal, floods and fertility, thunder and rebirth. When it retreats in winter, the air dries and clears, leaving behind the memory of abundance. The rhythm is ancient, steady as pulse, older than any city it sustains. In the Amazon, water vapor rises from trees like invisible smoke. Every leaf exhales moisture, building a sky river that flows westward, feeding clouds that will one day rain over the Andes. The forest waters itself, recycling the same molecules again and again until deforestation breaks the loop and the air grows thin. In that sense, a single tree can affect a distant glacier. A rainforest can determine the fate of snow. The vapor that leaves a leaf today might become part of a cloud that drifts across an ocean and snows onto a mountain half a world away. Everything that breathes contributes to the weather. Even coral reefs have their role. The microscopic life that lives within them releases compounds into the air that seed clouds, helping to shade the ocean that birthed them. In this way, the sea builds its own protection. The same vapor that rises from waves may later fall as snow on distant peaks, melt into rivers, and return through the veins of the planet to where it began. The cycle is perfect in its imperfection. Sometimes drought, sometimes deluge, but always movement, always connection. Humidity changes how we feel because we are made of the same material. When the air is thick with moisture, our bodies lose their ability to cool. Sweat can no longer vanish into vapor. The boundary between us and the atmosphere blurs. Our skin becomes part of the air's exchange, our comfort dependent on the invisible rhythm of evaporation. When the air dries, the opposite happens. We become brittle, cracked, light. Weather moves through us as easily as it moves through land and sea. Sometimes you can see the ocean in the air directly. The shimmer of heat on pavement, the halos around lights, the haze that softens the horizon on humid days. Those are glimpses of vapor-bending light, the unseen made visible for a moment. At dawn, mist gathers in low valleys, condensing out of the night's cooling breath, and when the sun rises, it lifts again, returning to invisibility. The air forgets, the ground remembers. There are satellites that watch this vapor move, tracing its paths in swirling ribbons around the globe. From that high vantage, the world looks like a breathing creature, plumes of moisture rising from the equator, drifting toward the poles, curling over mountain ranges, breaking into storms. Scientists call it the water cycle, but that phrase feels too mechanical. What it really is a dialogue. Sea to sky, tree to cloud, storm to river. The ocean is never confined to its basin. It's everywhere at once, shaping weather, life, and time. If you stand by the coast on a humid night, you can almost feel the exchange happening. The air hums faintly with salt and warmth, the tide's rhythm mirrored in the wind. The ocean is climbing upward in slow, invisible waves, beginning another circuit across the planet. Tomorrow, some of that vapor will rise into clouds, travel for days, then fall as rain onto forests, mountains, or cities. It will run to rivers, slide back to sea, and the cycle will begin again. The sky drinks from the ocean drinks from the sky, and between them, everything lives. The weather of Earth feels wild until you realize how strange the rest of the cosmos truly is. Our storms, our rains, our gentle breezes and violent tempests, all of it is mild compared to what unfolds beyond this blue atmosphere. The universe is full of planets that breathe different elements, where clouds are made of metals and rain falls not as water, but as liquid fire or gems. Out there, weather becomes something else entirely, not a mood of the air, but a performance of physics on unimaginable scales. Yet even these alien skies follow the same laws that guide our own. Heat rises, cold sinks, pressure moves. The difference lies in what those forces have to work with, and the results are both terrible and beautiful. Take Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Beneath its orange haze, rivers carve valleys through a landscape colder than dry ice. There are lakes and seas there, but not of water. They are filled with liquid methane and ethane hydrocarbons, so frigid they flow like oil. The clouds that drift across Titan's sky are made of the same chemicals, and when they grow heavy, they burst into rain. Methane falls in slow motion, each droplet descending through dense air that smells faintly of gasoline. It collects in basins, evaporates, and rises again, forming a methane cycle that mirrors our own water cycle almost perfectly. To stand there, if you could survive the cold, would be to watch an alien echo of Earth's weather, a frozen mimicry of life's familiar rhythm, repeating itself under a distant sun, farther from warmth. On the gas giants Neptune and Uranus, storms rage that make even Jupiter's great red spot look tame. Their clouds are not white or gray, but shades of cobalt and sapphire, colored by methane high in their atmospheres. Winds whip through them at more than 1,000 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound on Earth. Lightning flashes through layers of hydrogen and helium, brief illuminations in endless blue. But deeper still, where the pressure grows beyond comprehension, something extraordinary happens. The methane, the same gas that rains softly on Titan, breaks apart under crushing force. Carbon atoms squeeze together, crystallizing into diamonds. Those diamonds fall like rain, forming glittering storms that descend for thousands of miles until they melt again into carbon oceans. It sounds like myth, but it's chemistry, happening silently in the dark. Closer to home, Jupiter's storms are grander still. Its atmosphere is a canvas of bands and whorls, winds circling the planet in parallel rivers of ammonia and hydrogen. The Great Red Spot, a hurricane large enough to swallow Earth, has been spinning for centuries, its edges shredding smaller tempests that come too close. The lightning there is brighter than anything we've seen, 10 times stronger than Earth's, illuminating clouds made of ammonia ice. Each flash lights the planet's night side for an instant, a glimpse of chaos frozen mid-turn. Yet even there, patterns persist, pressure gradients, convection, the same principles that shape our skies, written in a different palette. On Venus, weather becomes almost unbearable. The air is thick enough to crush a submarine, filled with carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. Clouds blanket the planet in perpetual dusk, trapping heat so efficiently that temperatures never fall below 800 degrees Fahrenheit. It rains acid there, though the drops evaporate before they touch the ground, leaving behind a haze of corrosion. The wind at the surface is slow, barely a breeze, but high above, the atmosphere races around the planet in just 4 Earth days, carrying storms the size of continents. Venus's sky glows faintly with lightning and sulfur, a toxic ballet beneath a yellow sun. To watch it from orbit would be to see an ocean of cloud with no surface, only motion and light. Beyond our solar system, the weather grows stranger still. On some exoplanets, those distant worlds orbiting alien stars, the rain is not water, nor methane, nor even diamond, but molten iron. One such world, called WASP 76b, orbits so close to its star that one side is always day and the other eternal night. The heat on the day side vaporizes metals, which rise as glowing vapor into the upper atmosphere. Winds carry that metallic air to the dark side, where temperatures drop enough for it to condense and fall as iron rain. Imagine standing beneath such a sky, molten metal hissing as it cools, sparks flickering like lightning, There is no sunrise there, only an endless twilight, lit by the embers of its own weather. Still other planets host glass storms, where silica particles lifted by fierce winds slash through the air like sand blades. On some, the skies glow with auroras not green but crimson or violet, shaped by magnetic fields larger than our entire solar system. There are worlds where clouds are made of rubies, where snow falls as lead, where lightning strikes so powerful they outshine the stars for an instant. Each one follows rules that would make no sense to our senses, yet they obey the same physics that gives us rainbows and snow. The universe does not play favorites, it only experiments. To study alien weather is to realize that the boundaries of what is possible are wider than imagination. Earth's gentle storms, its mild oceans of vapor, its breathable air, these are the exception, not the rule. And yet, across all these worlds, the same story repeats: energy rising, cooling, condensing, falling, the same breath passing from one state to another endlessly. Weather, wherever it occurs, is the language of balance. It is how a planet thinks out loud, how it translates heat and motion into beauty and destruction. When we look up and see clouds drift across our own sky, we are watching the same processes that shape diamonds on Neptune and iron storms on distant suns. Every gust of wind here carries the same physics that rules the cosmos. The difference is only scale, only material. The sky above us is local, but the pattern is universal. Somewhere out there, another world is spinning, another storm is forming, and lightning is writing the same brief message across an unfamiliar sky. Energy seeking equilibrium, chaos learning to breathe. The weather outside has always had a way of finding its echo inside us. Long before forecasts, satellites, or radar maps, people read the sky as though it were a mirror of the soul. The hush before a storm became a feeling of dread or awe. A sudden wind carried omens. The first drop of rain after months of drought could bring tears. We have always lived at the mercy of the air around us, and over centuries we learned not only to endure it, but to make meaning from it, to fold the sky into our language, our rituals, our art. The atmosphere may belong to the planet, but weather has always belonged to us too. Every culture has stories about the sky's moods. Thunder was once the voice of gods or ancestors, their anger rolling across the horizon. Lightning was divine fire, a spark from another world. In Greek myth, Zeus hurled bolts from his throne. In Norse tales, Thor's hammer made the heavens roar. Among the Yoruba of West Africa, Shango's storms were symbols of justice and power. The Aztecs saw rain as the tears of Tlaloc, the god of fertility. Even now the language lingers when we say, someone is under the weather, stormy, radiant. We're invoking the same old truth. Emotion and climate share a vocabulary because they share a rhythm. Rituals grew from that connection. People danced for rain, burned herbs for wind, sang to calm the sea. The Hopi performed ceremonies timed, with the monsoon, their chants rising like clouds themselves. In parts of Africa and Asia, rainmakers traced patterns in dust to call storms from the horizon. The logic wasn't superstition, it was empathy. If the sky could feel, perhaps it could listen. And sometimes, it did. The rains came, and people believed their voices had joined the chorus of the world. Whether coincidence or not, the bond deepened. Weather became not just an element, but a companion, one capable of mercy or wrath. Poets have always understood this. Rain isn't just water falling, it's longing, cleansing, melancholy. The smell that comes before it, petrichor, is among the most ancient scents we know. It's released when dry earth drinks in the first drops, carrying oils from plants and bacteria that have waited months to wake. That scent has followed humanity since our beginnings, a reminder of renewal so deep it lives in our blood. It's the smell of relief, of something ending and something beginning. No wonder writers reach for it when they describe memory, forgiveness, or love returning after distance. In literature and art, weather is emotion made visible. Van Gogh's swirling skies, Turner's tempests, the quiet fogs in Japanese woodblocks, all of them paint not the air itself, but what it feels like to live inside it. Storms become grief, sunlight becomes grace, snow becomes silence. Even in architecture, we design for weather not just as a barrier, but as a dialogue. Porches to hear rain on, windows that frame the rising light, courtyards that catch the wind. The human world is a shelter built inside the sky's temperament. Yet the influence goes deeper than metaphor. Our bodies are barometers, tuned to the shifting pressure. When the air grows heavy before a storm, joints ache, tempers shorten, fatigue drifts in. Some people feel euphoria when lightning is near, their skin alive with static, their pulse quickened by the charged air. Seasonal changes reshape entire cultures, the festivals of harvest, the dormancy of winter, the migration of work and celebration around cycles of temperature and daylight. The weather decides when we wake, what we eat, how we move, and sometimes how we dream. Whole civilizations have been defined by climate. The Nile's floods birthed agriculture and gods. The trade winds carried ships, languages, and empires. Monsoons shaped economies and migrations. The Little Ice Age redrew maps and inspired revolutions. Even our architecture whispers of weather, the thick walls of desert homes, the steep roofs of northern cottages, the stilted villages that rise with the tides. To understand a culture's design is to read its forecast written in stone and timber. But in all of it, myth, ritual, art, adaptation, there is reverence. The sky humbles us. We can harness electricity, predict hurricanes, seed clouds, but we still fall quiet at thunder. We still look up when snow begins to fall. Our faces tilted to the same wonder that captivated the first humans. In that moment, we're not masters of climate, but participants in it, part of the same cycle of heat, wind, and rain that has shaped every living thing. As the world warms, that relationship trembles. The weather we've always trusted to reflect us now responds to us instead, mirroring not our moods, but our consequences. Yet even in this shifting era, the bond remains. We are still weather-making creatures, exhaling clouds, sweating rivers, crying rain. The atmosphere we alter is the same one that built us, and our myths, dances, and poems still circle back to that truth. Stand outside on a day when the rain begins after long dryness. Breathe in. That scent, the earth waking, the air trembling, is older than language. It's the same across continents, across time. For a moment, you are not separate from the sky, but part of its memory. The human weather has always been this, to feel the planet's pulse and answer it with our own. The sky was once a wilderness beyond our reach, an expanse that moved according to rules older than time. We could name its moods but never change them. Now, for the first time in history, that boundary has begun to blur. The atmosphere, the same breath that cradled the first clouds and cooled the first rain, is no longer a passive element. It carries our fingerprints in every layer, from the ground to the stratosphere. Carbon, soot, vapor, heat, all of it traces the story of a species learning how to alter the wind. The weather, once something that happened to us, has become something we've begun to shape, sometimes by accident, sometimes by design. The Earth's systems are delicate in ways that seem impossible given their scale. A single shift in ocean temperature can redraw monsoon patterns that feed billions. A warmer Arctic doesn't just melt ice, it bends the jet stream, that invisible ribbon of wind that circles the globe. When the jet stream slows or twists, weather gets stuck. Storms that should pass linger for days, heat waves refuse to break, and winters turn erratic, moving in loops instead of lines. The atmosphere no longer behaves like a rhythm, but like a memory glitch, repeating itself unevenly. Every degree of change alters not just temperature but tempo, the cadence of the planet's breath. Already, we are seeing the air learn new habits. The tropics expand north and south, deserts crawl outward, hurricanes spin with greater hunger. Storms that were once rare have become seasonal visitors, while seasons themselves blur at the edges. The sky has grown restless, its balance shifting faster than our myths can keep up. Yet even as we marvel at the power we've unleashed, we find ourselves wondering, if we can disturb the weather, can we also restore it? The question is no longer theoretical, it's political, ethical, immediate. Weather modification has existed in small, strange forms for decades. Cloud seeding, for instance. Sprinkling silver iodide into clouds to coax them into rain was once a curiosity, then an experiment, now a tool used by farmers and governments alike. It works, sometimes, but the atmosphere is not a switchboard. To make it rain here may mean it doesn't rain there. The wind carries every choice farther than we intend. More ambitious ideas are on the horizon, scattering reflective particles high above the earth to dim sunlight, or spraying seawater into the sky to brighten clouds. Some imagine massive mirrors orbiting the planet, bending light to cool us. Others propose pulling carbon straight from the air, as if reversing a spell. Each idea sounds like salvation or hubris, depending on the tone of voice. But what happens when weather is no longer wild? If we could engineer the climate, decide where rain falls, how strong a storm becomes, which regions remain temperate, who would control that sky? The atmosphere doesn't recognize borders, yet humans always do. One country's drought could become another's experiment. One generation's solution could be the next one's undoing. The ethics of steering the wind are tangled in questions of ownership, power, and trust. The temptation is ancient, to master the forces that have always mastered us. But the sky does not forget. It moves in loops, carrying cause and effect around the world like a tide. Still, the dream persists. Scientists map the jet streams in exquisite detail, model atmospheric currents with supercomputers, chase storms into their hearts to learn how they think. We are trying to understand the architecture of chaos, to see whether it can be rewritten. In some ways, it's an act of love wanting to preserve what remains, to soften what we've harmed. But it is also an act of arrogance, imagining that a system built over billions of years could ever truly be ours to command. The sky is complex in ways that defy control. One intervention can echo for decades, rippling through oceans, forests, and the frozen poles. Perhaps the future of the sky will not be mastery, but negotiation. We may learn to listen more closely, to treat weather not as an enemy or machine, but as a conversation partner. There is wisdom in restraint, in knowing that some balances cannot be forced, only guided. The same technologies that tempt us toward manipulation might also teach humility. Satellites that track storms from orbit reveal how interconnected everything truly is. A dust storm in the Sahara, seeding clouds over the Atlantic, smoke from wildfires coloring sunsets half a world away. The atmosphere is a single, breathing body. Every action we take enters it like a whisper that grows louder with time. Someday, we might live under skies subtly reshaped by human hands. The rain may come from seeded clouds, the air cooled by engineered reflection, the storm steered by algorithms that weigh lives against rainfall. It might save us, or it might change us in ways we cannot yet imagine. What's certain is that the boundary between the natural and the artificial will dissolve above us, just as it already has below. And yet, even then, the sky will remain what it has always been, vast, restless, alive. The winds will still circle the planet, carrying salt, dust, and memory. The clouds will still build and break, thunder will still roll across mountains, and light will still bend through the evening air, scattering into color. We may influence the weather, but we will never own it. The atmosphere has always been larger than our reach, patient enough to outlast us. The future of the sky, in the end, will not just depend on how much we can change it, but on whether we can remember to stand beneath it and still feel awe. The air around you is ancient. Every breath you take has lived 1,000 lives before it reached you. The oxygen filling your lungs tonight once brushed the feathers of pterodactyls, cooled the magma fields of the newborn earth, froze inside glaciers, drifted in storms, and shimmered in lightning. It has moved through the lungs of whales, through forests and fires, through cities long since buried under dust. The air never ends, it only transforms. You are part of that endless exchange, a single inhale in a conversation the planet has been having with itself for billions of years. Each molecule of oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide is caught in a cycle without beginning or end. The air you breathe out will rise and mix, swept into the jet stream, carried across oceans, falling as rain or snow somewhere you'll never see. In a few weeks, perhaps, it might glide through the fronds of a fern or the gills of a fish. It may sleep inside an ice crystal for a century, or ignite in a bolt of lightning, or find its way into another human breath, half a world away. The atmosphere is a recycler beyond comprehension. Its only constant is change. The storms that rage across the planet are part of this same pulse. Every gust of wind, every raindrop that splashes on your skin is energy passing through form. Heat rises, cools, condenses, falls, and begins again. In that rhythm lies the planet's memory. The water in your veins once fell as snow on the Himalayas, once rolled through coral reefs, once lingered as mist on the leaves of a rainforest at dawn. What you call weather is not chaos, it's choreography. The earth has always been dancing with its own breath, and we, without realizing, move in step. Even the quietest air holds remnants of thunder. When lightning splits the sky, it tears molecules apart and fuses them anew, creating ozone and nitrogen compounds that drift down to feed plants, to feed us. Every storm rewrites a small part of the atmosphere, reshuffling the same ancient ingredients. The atoms that once flashed white-hot in the heart of a storm may now float through your bloodstream. The rain that cooled a volcano may be the same water steaming in your morning cup. There's a strange comfort in that continuity, the sense that nothing is ever truly lost, only borrowed. At the microscopic level, the air's motion never stops. Molecules dart and collide in endless dance, binding and breaking, shifting between gas and liquid and ice. What looks still to us is alive with movement. Even in the calmest sky, millions of tiny exchanges unfold each second. Warmth traded for coolness, moisture for dryness, energy for silence. The atmosphere breathes not just through hurricanes and tempests, but through the smallest flicker of motion, a leaf turning, a wave sighing, the warmth of your hand on a window pane. The weather of the world is also the weather of the body. There's humility in realizing that your breath doesn't belong to you. It's a loan from the earth, one that will be taken back the moment you exhale. The molecules leave you and continue their journey, unchanged except for the trace of your life within them. They may find their way into the cry of a bird, or the fog that clings to the ocean at dawn, or the cool air that gathers in a cave. To breathe is to participate, to give yourself, atom by atom, to everything else that breathes. The air is not yours, and yet it is you. Science tells us that most of the oxygen in the atmosphere comes from plankton drifting in the sea, that carbon moves from sky to soil to flesh and back again. But knowledge doesn't diminish wonder, it deepens it. The invisible threads that connect you to oceans, forests, and mountains are real. The same chemical loops that drive the weather also sustain life. The world is not made of separate parts. It is one great circulation, looping through itself like a single, endless heartbeat. When you look at a cloud, you are watching potential air that has cooled enough to reveal its own breath. When you feel the wind, you are touching motion that began in sunlight striking water. When you inhale, you are pulling a piece of that process into your chest, continuing the cycle as it has always been continued. Every breeze, every droplet, Every sigh is a reminder. The atmosphere doesn't just surround life, it is life. Someday, the air you breathe now will rise again, drift into another century, another shape. It may become mist curling over a distant ocean or frost on the window of a ship yet to be built. It may feed a storm, spark a fire, or carry the scent of rain through a forgotten valley. And somewhere, far in the future, another person may breathe it in without knowing its history, that it once filled your lungs, that it once lived here, in this quiet moment, between heartbeat and horizon. The weather will go on long after memory fades. The clouds will still gather and dissolve. Rain will still fall. Wind will still trace its slow circles around the planet. The same air will keep passing through forms, endlessly remade, endlessly shared. Every thunderclap, every snowflake, every calm blue morning will carry echoes of what came before. The sky's story is the Earth's story, and it includes you. You are breathing the past and exhaling the future. You are part of the eternal cycle,